If you were a monster hell-bent on dominating the human world, what would you do? Well, you would have to make humans your friends and work with them to destroy your former monster bosses, all just to satisfy your ambition becoming #1. Today I'm gonna break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the new monster bosses in Sentai Daishikkaku Season 2. These guys have no idea that their peaceful, successful lie is about to blow up in their face. This dude called X shows up on the media out of nowhere and suddenly starts exposing their deep, dark secrets, starting with the true cause of the Blue Ranger's death, and introduces himself before disappearing from the screen. Afterwards, the Ranger Force tries to restore some normalcy to everything by kicking off their Sunday monster show, and this time their opponent is this panda monster. And when the Rangers show up, they can't strike their perfect pose in Blue's absence. That's only the beginning. Green, Yellow, and Pink Ranger rush out into battle before Red finishes his weird speech, and Red joins the battle already angry. And things are about to get even worse, because when Red Keeper attacks the panda monster, the panda punch hits Red and breaks his face shield. And of course, Red doesn't know how to keep his temper, so he throws a tantrum like a baby without regard for the lives of the citizens in the stadium. He manifests the Ranger's divine weapon and shoots at the monsters and citizens behind him. Luckily, some trainee Rangers manage to evacuate everyone to safety before the beams hit, but immediately the citizens realize if they'd been 1 second later, they would have died. And as expected, the Rangers' popularity takes another hit. What are these guys doing? The popularity is already on decline, and the citizens are afraid that they're no longer strong enough to defeat monsters. Well, their first mistake was not controlling the media. Studies show that media influence on perception is a well-documented phenomenon, rather than controlling perception directly in a monolithic sense. Media shapes it through several key mechanisms, including agenda setting, framing, and algorithmic curation. Basically, to be at the top, you have to have a strong influence over what the media says. And considering that this is who the Red Ranger is, a control freak that wants all the optics, you should have done a better job at controlling the information leaks and access to the truth. If you want to maintain a facade, you can't just let some random guy wearing a mask go about leaking your secrets. And that brings us to the second issue, the Red Ranger's temper. Sure, he's supposed to be the paragon of strength, and strength often comes with wrath, but not reeling it in, especially in the presence of onlookers, is just stupid. The blame doesn't go exclusively to Red Ranger, because the other members of his team know how obnoxious he can be, and yet none of them ever talk about it. If they had done that, then maybe he wouldn't have lost his temper in the middle of a freaking live stream and made a mess of their already poor public image. Meanwhile, this Fighter D, has successfully infiltrated the Ranger Force by pretending to be a Ranger trainee named Hibiki. Now an official Ranger, he plans to take down the Ranger Force from inside, and also defeating his former monster boss, Pranoto. While Fighter D is busy making plans, the Rangers hold a meeting to figure out who Red's new assistant would be. When they mention Tokita, he refuses, ironically because Tokita looks like a villain. Later they talk about Blue Keeper's replacement, but when Izumi passionately volunteers to become the new Blue Keeper as next in rank, and the strongest Blue Ranger available, Red Ranger swiftly shuts her down because she's short and wouldn't be good for the optics. And that's when this dude shows up with tea for Red Ranger, and accidentally trips and pours the tea on him. With that, he gets a one-way ticket to the afterlife, because his brain gets squashed by Red's boots, and everybody simply watches and just turns a blind eye. The next day, Fighter D as Hibiki goes on a date with his sister. While they walk, they find this weird dude being tackled by the police, because they think he's involved with the people who have gone missing, but Hibiki speaks up for him and makes the police release him. However, after the man leaves, they realize that he lied, and Hibiki feels bad. His date with his sister comes to an abrupt end because she decides that the missing people have been abducted by monsters, and she wants to get to the root of everything. Fighter D runs into Usukubo, and they meet up with this cutie named Hisui. She informs them that they've both been assigned to the Green Ranger squad. She gives them some juicy news. The Green Squad, contrary to what the public thinks of them, is usually the squad that finds boss monsters because they specialize in stealth missions. The next day, Fighter D and Usukubo start their chores at the Green Squad, but it's nothing like what they expected. All they do is take out the trash and clean windows. And to make matters worse, Fighter D finds out that Green Squad has only 4 people, including himself and Usukubo. There are only Hisui and the Green Ranger himself now. No one knows where all the other members went, and immediately Fighter D sees his path to world domination vanish before his eyes. Meanwhile, the real Hibiki puts himself in trouble by going to this weird school where a boss monster is hiding. But what he doesn't know is that the fake Hibiki, Fighter D, is coming to the same school on an official mission with the Green Squad. As the squad heads into the slums, they link up with this weirdo from earlier, and Hisui informs the group that he's their informant named Chidori. Yes, like Kakashi's jutsu. He informs them that from his investigation, a group called Ouroboros has been at the center of the disappearances, and they are tied to a school just down the road. They head down to the school and run into the Ouroboros boss, this big-looking dude named Gato. He appoints the newbie here to take them around the school as part of their investigation, but Chidori's danger sense starts tingling almost immediately because he doesn't recognize Newbie from all of his investigations. And the newbie says he just joined the school, and that's why Chidori doesn't know him. Newbie takes him around the school, and while they're inspecting, Gato reports to the real boss that the Ranger forces have invaded their school, and things get really weird because the boss knows Hisui, and get this, he's wearing a Green Ranger uniform. The boss decides they have to disappear too. But instead of kidnapping or stopping them from leaving, Newbie here chases them to the gate and informs them that things only look normal because it's the weekend. He advises them to come back on a school day, and this advice almost kills everyone. The next day they head back to school, but the dilapidated buildings suddenly disappear like they ran into Itachi, and all of a sudden students appear walking about and heading to class. Hisui sees Gato and blames him for the genjutsu, but as soon as she attacks him, he mouths off some words and the time resets back to before they met him. And after testing out their theories, they reach the conclusion they've been trapped in the enemy's genjutsu. So they decide to obey the rules for the time being until they figure out how to break away from it. They head to class, and although Fighter D has a hard time sticking to the rules because he's a monster, they finally manage to get a break time without resetting, and during lunch, Hisui gives them a rundown of the boss monsters. That's when they find out that out of 12 bosses, the Rangers have taken down 7, leaving 5. She also points out that Magatia, one of the monster bosses that specializes in illusions, might be the boss of the school. And to make matters worse, Usokubo starts losing her memory because she thinks they are in a real school. Hisui tries to shake her out of it, but instead she snitches on Hisui and gets the day reset. And later Hisui, Chidori, and Fighter D meet on the roof to discuss their next plan, but Usokubo reports them to Gato, and he catches them on the roof. And then a few seconds later, the principal climbs to the roof, but as soon as Hisui sees him, her eyes bulge out because he's wearing the Green Squad uniform. The day resets again, but as soon as Hisui finds herself in the corridor, she rushes off to the principal's office. Turns out the principal is a missing member of Green Squad named Wakaba. They talk for a moment, and a boy claims he lost his memory from the moment he got into the school, but Hisui can see the lie, and that's why she's not surprised when he attacks her. They fight for a bit, but she finds out that he's using stolen gear, a divine artifact belonging to their former teammate who led him to the school on their original mission. Hisui overpowers him and kicks him out of the window, and unfortunately, even though she won the battle, a student sees both of them falling and recites the reset phrase, narrowly saving the principal's life. But when Hisui wakes up in the reset, her head hurts. She leaves the crew to take a walk, and while talking with Chidori, Fighter D is summoned to the staff room. When he gets there, Gato is alone inside, and Gato is tired of Fighter D. So he decides to try a more traditional approach. Their fight starts in the staff room, and that's when Gato discovers that Fighter D is really a monster and not a human. However, despite being a monster, D is useless against Gato, and he gets slashed again and again and again and again. After getting buried under a pile of desks, Fighter D asks Gato why he's helping a boss monster. The dude explains he's tired of the fighting. He promises to let Fighter D go as long as he promises to leave the school and never return. Because in his words, the students that the Ranger Force is searching for all came to the school of their own free will, and just then the room that Fighter D had tumbled into suddenly returns to normal. And the door opens, and Magatia walks in, a snake in a tracksuit. And before Fighter D can land a punch, he finds himself in the dilapidated building. He's been expelled. Getting expelled on a technicality on the first day of school is pretty crazy, but now with Fighter D gone, Hisui and Usokubo are potentially going to be stuck in the school forever. And because Chidori is just an informant with cool gear, and both Hisui and Usokubo are starting to lose their memories, it means getting to the bottom of this is important. But we need to do things differently. Now, of course, the blame for their problem really is everyone's fault. Their first mistake was listening to the advice of that annoying guide. The Rangers were a little too trusting and left everything up to chance when they decided to investigate. Yeah, we're not going to do that. In every organization, there's a hierarchy. The boss doesn't get sent to do the dirty work. If they applied this basic principle of organizational structure, things would have turned out differently. Hisui is clearly the highest authority in the Green Squad until Green Ranger returns from wherever he is. And that means she could have established some chain of command. And if we were in her shoes, we should have sent one person back to the Rangers to inform the guild that we found a possible lead, a spot where the kids could have disappeared to. This gives us the confidence of backup if anything goes wrong. And also, going back into a strange place on the advice of someone we don't know is pretty stupid. We shouldn't put all our eggs in one basket. And Fighter D shouldn't have gotten himself kicked out, with him being the only one able to be resistant fully to the genjutsu. He would have been highly instrumental in breaking the code of the genjutsu. And during the fight with Gato, once he realized it was a losing battle, he would have run away from the staff room. Fighter D is a fighter without any shred of honor because he is a monster, so he would have no issues running away from a fight he cannot win. If I were in his shoes, change the face, literally. I would change my face to that of a random student within the school and slip into any other class to avoid detection while planning what to do next. That way he would have linked up with Chidori and given him vital information on Gato, and that would have saved them in the long run. Meanwhile, back in the real world, these children head to the zoo for a fun day out. But that's when this kid sees a monster swallowing an elephant. They quickly send the news to the Red Keeper, but the doofus is too busy posing for the camera, and luck shines on Fighter D because as soon as he returns to the real world, he steps into these two cops from earlier. Meanwhile, in the genjutsu, Hisui notices that Fighter D is missing. She runs around the school, but she can't find him. While in the hallway, Principal Wakaba shows up and invites everyone to join him in the field. And although it looks harmless to the children, he's using them as insurance against Hisui. Outside the perimeter, Fighter D tells his story to the cops, and they find it hard to believe until he mentions Gato, because the older cop knows Gato's history as a former soldier, and he thinks Fighter D's impossible story is worth checking out. Meanwhile, back in the genjutsu world, Wakaba informs Hisui that Fighter D is no longer with them. He tells her to stop fighting off the genjutsu and give in to becoming an ordinary schoolgirl. He tells her that contrary to what he thinks, he's not the monster. He is actually her teammate from Green Squad. He killed his team lead and joined the monsters to create the school utopia. Before he can finish brainwashing Hisui, Chidori pulls out a special gun and shoots him dead. The cops storm the building and immediately get transported into the genjutsu. They spot Chidori, except he's in a rush to save Hisui, and he arrives just in time to see her get killed. But he manages to reset the loop with the help of one of the cops, and that's when the cops realize that Fighter D wasn't lying earlier. And when they get to Hisui this time and try to save her, she turns around with a blank face. Wakaba invites Gato to take out the trash and even prevents them from resetting by creating a rule allowing all the students to break all the laws for 10 minutes. The old cop rushes after Wakaba and Hisui but gets stabbed in the back, and that's when Wakaba stops the nice guy act and promises the new Hisui a very painful death. And when he's about to slash her down, Osan returns to life and gives him a solid punch in the eye, and that's not all. His face starts morphing from the old man into our boy Fighter D. Immediately their battle starts, but with one eye gone. Wakaba has a hard time fighting, hitting Fighter D with his divine artifact. So he does what any coward does, and he tries to use Hisui as a hostage. And what he doesn't know is that Fighter D doesn't give a hoot, and even in more reality, Hisui's acting, and just when he's about to slash her throat, she blocks him with her divine artifact. After, Fighter D and Hisui join hands and fight against Wakaba. But he's a wuss and he hides himself in a cocoon with 1 minute to go. But then Hisui calls a temporary truce with Gato, because Gato is in support of Wakaba's new plan to hurt everyone for his own sake, and together they bring down Wakaba just before the time runs out. Immediately after bringing Wakaba down, the temporary alliance between Gato and the Rangers expires. At the time, the school resets, but the principal is dead and no one remembers, well aside from the main actors. As they gather to begin their investigation, only one question is on Hisui and Fighter D's mind. Who is Magatia hiding as? And to figure it out, Fighter D decides to break the school rules over and over and over, and he keeps resetting the timeline until he's figured out who's lying. And it turns out one of the cops' younger brother is this dude, Nishiki, who introduced himself to them at the beginning of the loop. But their stories don't match because Nishiki originally claimed to have just joined the school. After resetting the timeline more times than the Speed Force can keep track of, Fighter D figures it out. Nishiki is Magatia. Foolish Mr. Cop tries to protect his brother because he believes Fighter D's wrong, but then he gets stabbed in the belly, and Magatia transforms into his real self and sends Hisui and Fighter D on an endless chase in an unending staircase. They try to fight back, but the staircase trap starts collapsing and they're not alone. The cop and Usakubo are also stuck in the trap, and because they are technically mere civilians, Hisui and Fighter D have to fight while protecting them, and that's why Hisui gets caught and Magatia stabs her in the back. Alright, first off, this boss here is really overpowered, that he has successfully dulled the instincts of Hisui and Usakubo, and of course, staying in the domain doesn't make sense, because if we stay where we're going to keep repeating the same day, we're going to get worn out, our senses are going to get dulled. We should be working on breaking the illusion, so I would suggest that we destroy the illusion. I know, no kidding, hear me out. The way Magatia's illusion works is just like domain expansion in Jujutsu Kaisen. That means there are a few tricks we can try to break it down. First, of course, is that the domain to be broken from the outside. Now to do this, we would need someone strong to come from the outside and destroy the domain. However, it seems like our guys don't have this option. One of them should have gone down to the Ranger's Keep and got the attention of the other keepers, because irrespective of how strong a boss monster is, he can't withstand the combined power of all the Dragon Keepers. If Fighter D had been smart enough to send a message back to the Dragon Keepers when he got out the first time, they wouldn't be in this situation. But now that we're here, we have to break the domain from within, and this requires them working together and at full power. Hisui needs to get her act together and distract Magatia. From what we've seen, our girl is powerful enough with her giant bites to cause some distractions, and during this time, Fighter D, who can literally transform into into anything, will transform into an insect or into Gato. The main goal is to get close, because his illusions are powerful, but he doesn't have a great defense. And that means if we can get close, we can end it once and for all. So if I were them, I would have Fighter D and switch to Gato and close the gap before stabbing in the back and breaking the illusion and getting everyone out for good. While she's weak, he strips her of her divine artifact, and he's about to kill her when Chidori shows up like a knight in barefaced armor, and Fighter D tries to warn him, but then he does something unexpected. He pulls out a divine artifact from his tool bag and transforms into the Green Keeper. And that's not all. Magatia transforms into a Megazoid beast, but Green Boy doesn't care. He increases the size of his hammer and flogs Magatia out of his domain with a single hit. And that's when Gato shows up, and Fighter D tries to reason with him, because with Magatia out of the domain starts falling apart, and Fighter D is having a hard time saving everyone alone. However, before Gato can agree to help, Magatia calls out to him and asks him to sacrifice his body, because Green Keeper has destroyed his former meat suit, and that's why Gato turns down Fighter D's request, and they end up fighting. Despite Gato's years of training in the army, Fighter D has a lot of plot armor advantage, and a 2-minute lesson for one cop before he came back into the illusion world, and with those cards, he lands a critical hit on Gato. In his defeated form, Magatia tries to slip away unnoticed, but Hisui pins him to the ground, and the Green Keeper delivers the finishing blow. With his death, everything returns to normal and all the captives receive their memories. But instead of thanking them, they're angry, and they boo him because they just destroyed their utopia. Meanwhile, the real Hibiki wakes up after being taken care of by this old guy. He immediately learns that Ouroboros has disbanded after the death of Magatia. However, he heads back to school to investigate, and that's when he runs into this weird couple about to be eaten by this monster. He saves them by pushing the monster out of the window, but then he's also saved by the weird couple before he falls to his death. To rest from the stress of all of their hard work, Hisui, Fighter D, and Usukubo head down for the eatery for some meat. They meet up with some of their fellow former trainees, Urabe and Yukino, and that's when they learn that no other squad knows the truth of how dangerous Green Squad's information gathering missions are. Later, Fighter D meets up with his benefactor, the cute lady in yellow called Yumeko, and she tells him that with the Blue Keeper out of their way, their new focus is how to kill the Green Keeper. Fighter D takes up stalker duties and tries to follow Chidori around, but that's when he runs into these strange humans protesting for monsters' rights and equality, even calling for the Rangers force to be disbanded. After that, he links up with Yumeko in her cute dress, and they follow Chidori about for the rest of the day, until he comes to this remote house. After that, Yumeko and Fighter D gear up and get ready to kill Chidori. Unfortunately, Urabe and Yukino show up and are ready to throw a wrench into their whole plan. Yumeko knocks out Yukino in a matter of seconds, and after losing for a bit, Fighter D pins Urabe to the ground. However, because he trained with Urabe back in the day, he's a little hesitant to kill him, and that hesitation gives Chidori the time he needs to catch them and morph into Green Keeper. Yumeko immediately attacks him, and he creates a giant labyrinth with his divine artifact, and uses the opportunity to knock Yumeko out in a split second. However, Fighter D shows up, and he hesitates to detonate his bomb and kill Green Keeper, and this disappoints Green Keeper because Fighter D can't stick to his role as a villain. Instead of killing him, Green Keeper ignores Fighter D and walks away. The next day, this guy shows up again on every screen to address more of the lies cooked up by the Ranger Force. While Chidori watches him on his phone, Fighter D shows up behind him and tries to assassinate him again. And then Usukubo shows up and drags him to the laundry. Later, Hisui comes for him, and Fighter D is forced to join her for a mission with the Red Squad. But when they get to the venue, it's a full-on bloodbath, and many Red Squad members are already dead. Red Ranger shows up in time to blast the monster away. Thanks to him, the Green Squad has nothing to do, so Fighter D and Usukubo decide to help with the cleanup. However, Fighter D runs into his old friend Shion, and Shion informs him that Red Ranger thinks that either Fighter D or Usukubo is a traitor, and he wastes no time to throw Usukubo under the bus. Meanwhile, Usukubo also joins the cleaning, but that's when she discovers something weird. There's a student's ID card inside the monster's folds, and that's when it hits her. The monsters they just killed were once human beings, and things only get worse from here. Fighter D goes for a walk because he learned that Red Ranger has his eyes on him, and that's when he stumbles on Monster Gold, and he finds Red Ranger undressing, catches him in the most lacking moment, and he just kills him, stabs him in the back, and the dude actually dies, like very just anticlimactic. Moving on. At the same time, our favorite guy comes back and brings the tea on these new monsters and how the Ranger Force had been trying to cover it up from the public. He also answers the question where these new monsters came from, and to stop them from destroying the society, he places a demand for the dissolution of the Ranger Force. His message was was, well, received the way he expected by mass hysteria. Protests break out and movements start calling for the dissolution of the Ranger Force. That's when this dude in purple hair gets accosted by these weird-looking people. They introduce themselves as the Monster Protection Society. Turns out the dude in purple hair is about to be reinstated as the Blue Ranger, and his name is Keisuke. The next day, Fighter D cannot believe his eyes because not only is the Red Ranger still alive, there's a new Blue Ranger in town. All his hard work goes down the drain. And to make matters worse, Usukubo resigned, leaving Fighter D with all the work and the bad public reaction. And to make matters worse, Usukubo, after resigning, joins the Monster Protection Society, where her father is the leader. Meanwhile, back at the Yellow Squad, Yumiko takes her younger sister to their super secret research facility and proves that the Ranger Squad is just as dark as people suspect them to be. Yumiko even suggests that this new monster may have been created with the help of the Yellow Rangers 13 years ago. With her speculation, she promises to kill a former member of the Yellow Rangers who participated in the early research but is now working with the Monster Protection Society. That evening, Fighter D runs into Usukubo and she invites him and Hisui to take a walk with her. She leads them to the HQ of the Monster Protection Society. There they meet Yakushi, Usukubo's dad, and he makes a case for equality between monsters and men because he believes the only reason the war has continued on is because the Ranger Force doesn't want peace. Fighter D loves it and is even thinking of joining and supporting the Monster Protection Society, and that is until Yakushi says the monsters are helpless and can't do anything on their own. And that's why he doesn't hesitate when Hisui says they should head back. But there's a new problem. They've been surrounded by elite members of the Monster Protection Society. Hisui is still not interested in fighting them because the Ranger Force only fights monsters. But this former Yellow Squad member named Dai rips off the bandage on his head and shows her that he's already turning into a monster. And it's the same thing for the other elite members. Hisui finally takes them seriously, but when they start using their quasi-divine artifacts, she realizes she's screwed. Luckily, Fighter D does the smart thing and takes Yakushi hostage, but when they try to use him as a ticket out of the hall, this boss monster shows up and sends Fighter D flying. Well, based on what we've seen, we cannot stay here any longer because surprisingly, this chick is stupid. At this point, Hisui has to be the most talented liability ever, which is why Fighter D needs to get focused on getting the frick away from her by separating, changing into one of her enemies, or just turning into a rock. She's such a goody two-shoes, it's really annoying. The Monster Protection Society exists as a direct antithesis to the Ranger Force. Instead of protecting the humans, they're protecting monsters and literally planning to take over the world by creating a world of equality. Yeah, when everything's equal, nothing is. They don't realize that there never can be equality between monsters and men. And if they take away the only existing line of defense that has held the monsters in check for so long, they would basically be dooming humanity to servitude. And that's something that Hisui's long-serving ranger has always understood. But if she did, she had a lousy way of showing it. We're already at a disadvantage. It's just her and Fighter D versus whoever is lurking in the shadows of the Monster Society HQ. And that means it's a battle of attrition. We have to draw first blood. The first mistake was going into an entire society's HQ with no backup. Beyond that, having heard the twisted ideology of the society, not stopping it immediately is why they're going to lose. Because if history is anything to go by, dangerous ideologies left unchecked always do the most damage. Keeping this in mind, Fighter D would have to be strategic. He needs to think of a way to get out of HQ. And honestly, leave Hisui to be on her own. Just morph into a fly or a rat and just get out of there. Go out the nearest window. That way you can run to the Green Squad, call for backup from the nearest phone line, feel better about yourself, because if he stays, he might not live much longer. The boss monster sends Fighter D, and Yakushi, unlike our hesitating duo, immediately grabs Fighter D's weapon and slashes him to death. After seeing a boss monster and understanding that the society is serious about killing everyone, Hisui finally gets her crap together and starts doing what she should have done. But luckily for Fighter D, he was almost dead, it was close. His monster regeneration though was really strong, so he doesn't really die. And when Yakushi notices that he is a fighter, not a human, he falls down in worship and he asks for an autograph and uses the chance to tell Fighter D that he's basically like an adult stuck in a child's body with a crush on the villains in the Ranger story. Yeah. They return to the general hall and Hisui has already taken care of business, but she's getting her butt handed to her by the boss monster. He manages to save her by asking Yakushi to take her hostage instead of killing her. Later, the Ranger Force and the representatives of the Monster Society meet up for their proposed discussions. Accusations fly from every corner, but the Rangers get the advantage by revealing their faces and dropping cheesy lines about defeating monsters for the good of all. However, their victory is short-lived, and it's all because of Red Ranger and his anger. But when he talks with Yakushi at the end of the live stream, he cannot control his anger and ends up ripping off Yakushi's hand. What he doesn't know is that this dude from his squad is who's actually Hualipon in disguise. And he takes advantage of the situation and sends a live video of Red Ranger overreacting all over the internet. And that's it. Goodbye, Red Ranger Force popularity. Thanks to the video, the Ranger Force gets cancelled totally and the Monster Society gains like 1,000 more followers in less than a day. The real Hibiki shows up at the HQ, but this monster named XX leads him to a prison and stuffs him in there before he can know what's going on, and it's all in a bid to protect him. Yakushi gives a passionate speech about the monsters and how they've won and humanity has lost, and that's when all the humans gathered realize, oops, they messed up, because Yakushi declares the extermination of all humans, and then the Monster Society releases a special chemical that turns all the humans gathered here into monsters. Luckily, the Ranger Force shows up just in time to prevent the new monsters from running into the city. While they fight, Fighter D makes his decision. He decides to not fight on the side of both the Ranger and the Monster Society. As a true monster, he creates his own path and decides to go on a rampage. Instead of fighting against the monsters alone, he kills the monsters and knocks out the members of the Ranger Force at the same time. Fighter D's rampage gets interrupted when these two executives of the Monster Society shows up. They inject themselves with a green device and turn into boss monsters. The one dude turns into Magatia, and the other turns into a weird ice monster. And the new Magatia creates an illusory world, and the only way to get out is to reach the top of the world. Fortunately for the other cadets, the Yellow Ranger shows up and Fighter D almost falls into acid, but he maxes out his luck stats once again, and then he has a conversation with Yellow Keeper. And that's how we learned that Yellow Keeper created the divine artifacts through his research. But get this, they were created using Yumiko as a specimen. Meanwhile, Yellow Keeper watches two of his squad members go up against the new female boss. Turns out her power is the ability to repel any attack directed at her. But when she tries to attack the Yellow Keeper and throw him into the acid, he shoots one of his teammates who's in her line of sight, and his weapon kills both his teammate and the female boss monster. The new Magatia goes into a rage when he sees his beloved friend die at the Yellow Keeper's hand. So he whips out a second dose on the monster drug and injects himself. And thanks to that, Magatia comes back to life and immediately warps Fighter D out of his special world because D is immortal. Immediately, Fighter D gets into a fight with Usukubo in the real world, but back in the illusion world, Yellow Keeper makes it to the top of the world and destroys all the bridges leading there. But before disappearing, as he goes, all the other Rangers stuck in the illusion world realize that there's no way out for them. Meanwhile, the Blue Ranger squad joins the action, but the new Blue Ranger feels a little unmotivated because there's no reward. And once again, this weird couple is caught in the middle of a crisis, but just like before, they're busy loving up on themselves. One Blue squad member manages to save them from a monster attack, but their legs get squashed, but they remain unmoved. That's when this cute Blue squad chick warns the Rangers to stay away, because despite their unassuming look, the two of them together are actually a boss monster. They morph into their real form and wipe out the Blue squad in a matter of seconds. When they're about to kill this cute Blue squad chick, the Mr. Unmotivated Blue Ranger joins the fray and freezes the entire world just to save his teammates. In a matter of seconds, he escapes with everyone. But he's not the only one to get a victory, because Green Keeper's opponent ingests a second dose of the monster drug and becomes a giant boss monster. However, Green Keeper is equal to the task because it turns out his divine artifact can make him a giant. In one hit, he squashes the brain of the monster, and while our Rangers are winning on the outside, the Red Squad is getting decimated inside the illusory world. Well, except for this guy. Despite getting crushed by some balls and being stabbed in the stomach by Magatia, he keeps rising back up because apparently he can do this all day. With the help of his teammate, he stabs Magatia in the belly and the illusory world disappears. Yakushi goes to Hisui and Hibiki in their cell and offers them monster drugs because it'll only be a matter of minutes before the monsters defeat the Ranger Force. Except they both turn him down, and outside Pink Keeper batters Hualipon. But the dude is as slippery as an eel and he slices off her head. But luckily our girl has death under her control and she uses her divine artifact and comes back to life. Unfortunately for her, XX releases her brother, Hibiki, and Hisui from their cage, and Hibiki walks right into their battle with Hualipon. Despite having the advantage, he becomes the variable that ends her life, because Hualipon decapitates Hibiki in less than a second. And now Pink Keeper has to choose between saving herself and her brother. And like any good Oni-sama, she saves her brother, but it comes at a heavy price. Oh well. Okay, great sacrifice from Oni-sama, but come on, this was pretty bad considering how Hibiki just moved. I guess we can say it runs in the family. But irrespective of how you look at it, Hibiki caused the death of the Pink Keeper. Think about it. Hibiki strolled into a war zone, literally hoping to survive on vibes, so I guess Fighter D, acting as Hibiki, must have gotten Hibiki some foaming character syndrome. He doesn't have plot armor, and all the times he got into a fight with important characters, he lost an arm, he got burned, he got knocked out cold. So, I mean, you think after so many near brushes with death, he would learn the lesson. I mean, no one enters a war zone without a weapon, so I guess unless you're Private Desmond Doss, I mean, even he had his own ultimate weapon if you catch my drift, but not Hibiki. If I were in his shoes, I would be talking. X offered him a chance to escape the bloodbath, find a safe hiding spot, stay protected, but no, he wanted to be a hero. So, if I had to enter the battle to prove my heroics, I would take the least precaution by getting a weapon, maybe a good old Gatling gun or something. Given the setting of the show, we know we're set in the 21st century of Japan, so their weapons are pretty advanced, and while we can't get our hands on any divine artifacts, we can find some good old guns to make use of. Now, gun ownership in Japan is low, but hey, you can find anything in the black market. All we need to do is go down a dark alley, hopefully don't get abducted, but we'll get a gun. Now, Hibiki doesn't get all the blame here, because Pink Keeper should be praised for loving her brother. She was caught lacking though, I mean, he lost his life. But you're the Pink Keeper, you know? Think about this, how many more people would die at the hands of Hualapun just because Pink Keeper was too emotionally invested to see the only solution? You can always mourn Hibiki's death, but on the battlefield, overwhelming your opponent and ensuring the safety of citizens should take priority. In turn, Hibiki and XX attack Hualapun, and thanks to the previous damage done by Pink Keeper, they destroy him with ease. But when Hibiki turns around, Pink Keeper's body is gone. Turns out our girl's still kicking. She's not the only one, because in this room, Yakushi finally uses his own injections. He doesn't turn into any mere monster. Meanwhile, in the city, the government issues evacuation orders for the city's safety. While that's going on, Urabe heads down to the monster's domain to do some recruitment, but Fighter D is still dancing with Usakubo, and that's when she drops a bombshell on him. She's part monster because her mom was a monster while her dad was a human. However, there's no time to digest the information because Yakushi morphs into the most powerful monster on the block, a villain monster called Death Mechia. After years of research and development, he finally created a monster immune to all attacks, and he knocks out both Blue and Green Ranger with one attack. The battle gets chaotic as Fighter D runs into Cutie Pie from Blue Squad, who's out for revenge. D tries to talk no jutsu to escape punishment, but things don't work out as planned. Luckily, Usakubo is there, so D morphs into her to buy some time. However, Usakubo's monsterification drug slips out of her hand, and Cutie Pie from Blue Squad doesn't hesitate to grab it. She digests it and turns into a semi-monster, but Usakubo isn't having it. She uses the last of her power to force the drug out of Cutie Pie and leaves on the floor unconscious. Outside, the complete Dragon Keepers gather against Death Mechia, but their attacks are overall useless, and the formerly Yakushi overpowers all 5 of them and hurls them to the ground like a meteor out of the sky. But then he announces that the age of the Dragon Keepers is over and launches a full attack on the civilians using his pet monsters. But Fighter D isn't going down without a fight, and he's not alone. He gets help from Hisui, who's gone back her divine artifact. Together, they defeat Yakushi by themselves. But this choice would require everybody to work together. Urabe returns to the surface with the fighters by his side. Immediately, they form a bridge for the humans to walk across and get to safety. This tank-looking dude named Shupo joins the battle, claiming to be the Ranger Force's secret weapon, but only takes one punch from Death Mechia to send him flying. Usakubo shows up, but her father triggers her with some sort of secret code and tells her to fulfill her mission. And just like that, Usakubo attacks our friends and makes a mess of things. But her friend Kurusu isn't going down without a fight. He invokes the ancient art of Talk no Jutsu and asks Usakubo why she saved him during the training days if she was just gonna kill him like this. The question plants a seed of disunity in her, and she can no longer figure out why she's obeying her father. She tries to talk to Death Mechia to stop attacking, but he immediately discards her as useless. He knocks her out with one hit and turns away. And that's when Death Mechia also drops a bombshell that Usakubo is not his real daughter. Thanks to him, she has an identity crisis, but Hisui seizes the opportunity to distract her while Fighter D lands a clean hit on Death Mechia that moves him for the first time. However, hearing people praise Fighter D for landing a hit on Death Mechia, the twisted Red Ranger with the main character complex cannot stand it. So he rises back to his feet and decides to defend his title as the main protagonist, which he's not. He charges himself to overload and attacks with a punch, but Green Ranger informs him to aim for the horns. Yumiko throws an alley-oop by pausing the monster just in time for Red Ranger to land his hit. Green Ranger immediately joins the fray and sends Death Mechia flying even further. At the next location, the Yellow Ranger is already waiting, and he launches an attack so strong that even Death Mechia is shocked, because a hero must always be able to break out of a pinch. Following his attack, Pink sends him into a dark room with a kick, and inside, Usakubo and Hisui are waiting. Death Mechia thinks the attack has failed because he still feels powerful, but that's when Fighter D shows up and kicks off his second horn before falling into a prison together with him. When Death Mechia asks what the rest of their plan was, they explain it very simply, and that is to starve him to death because Fighter D, who's trapped with him, is immortal, doesn't need food to survive. After the battle, Red Ranger makes a passionate speech about their devotion to fighting monsters and how they will never stop until the fight is over, but in the dark, the real Hibiki watches this whole poop show. He knows there are fakes among both the monsters and the Rangers, and that's when he decides he's going to reset the board and correct all the fakes.